From the Golden State letting Jordan Poole leave in favor of the veteran PG to the way CP3's skill set suits the Warriors setup, here's how Chris Paul will fit with the Warriors. There's clearly a plan here, cause why else would you let a young and promising point guard like Poole leave, and after just one season of mediocrity? Don't get me wrong, it was still a pretty decent campaign all things considered, but expectations are always extra high in a team like the Warriors. That's why Poole's performances in the playoffs were criticized quite a bit, and I was absolutely shocked by the Warriors' decision to let him walk. I mean, there were definitely some other signs as well, with the Splash Brothers not being big fans of JP, and the whole punching incident, for which Draymond Green didn't get as much criticism as you'd expect. Let's be honest, as poor as that playoff campaign was, there must have been something off the court about Jordan that didn't sit right with the Warriors. Still, why'd anyone let a player of Poole's quality just leave like that, especially after spending a couple of seasons teaching him the Golden State way of playing ball? Like I said though, there's definitely a plan in Steve Kerr's mind, and it's not the best of ideas to argue with a four-time championship-winning coach. He clearly believes CP3's the better fit, and that man rarely gets a call wrong, so let's see how exactly Paul fits into this Warriors team. But before I get to their roster, what does this trade mean for the Warriors' two-timeline plan? The Golden State has come up with many league-changing ideas under the management of Kerr, and with weapons like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson on the roster, it's easy to try quirky little ideas which end up being very successful. The latest of those ideas was to ditch a full rebuild, cause who wants to see their favorite team go through a rough patch as they replace their aging superstars? With no one in the NBA coming up with a solution to that dip in form and bad days, like the ones Houston Rockets fans have been dealing with since James Harden's exit, Kerr came up with a genius proposition. The four-time champ suggested the idea of bringing out two timelines that go side by side, one with Steph, Draymond, and Klay focused on being successful in the now, the other one with younger talent learning from the big guns, ready to take over from the OG spine that's been so successful in the modern era. On paper, there couldn't be a better idea, and the Warriors actually executed it to perfection, winning the 2021-22 championship while cultivating some of the best young talents in the league. The problem here is the so-called second timeline was heavily dependent on Poole's contributions, and based on his regular season development, it looked like a solid plan. So their decision to trade Poole for someone 15 years older than him sounds absolutely crazy, but it did happen, and it's been one of the biggest trades of the 23 offseason. To be fair, the Phoenix Suns set the wheels in motion for this madness, after they traded for Bradley Beal, giving up a package built around Paul in return. It wasn't the most attractive trade offer for Beal on the table, but the Wizards had their hands tied due to Beal's no-trade clause. This is why I think they pulled off a heist, turning Paul into all that they got from the Warriors.
Obviously, the day the trade happened and all that, and you put the jersey on for the first time. Me and Steph actually worked out together today, and it's
That included JP, along with Patrick Baldwin Jr., Ryan Rollins, a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and some cash considerations. Giving up all this for someone who'd be 39 before the season ends is madness. To make matters even more interesting, Poole already has what Paul doesn't have, a ring. So in a way, the Warriors gave up a championship-winning PG for someone who hasn't won one in nearly 2 decades of being in the NBA. All this tells us is that the Golden State hierarchy clearly weren't big fans of Poole, and they wanted him off their books as soon as possible. Whatever they thought about JP is a different story altogether. I'm here to explore how exactly the Paul trade makes any sense, and from a financial perspective, it's a great move. Poole was set to begin a 4-year contract worth $128 million, which means the Warriors would have been committed to JP for 4 years and a lot of money. With Chris on the other hand, the Warriors get an insane amount of flexibility, as all they owe Paul is $31 million, which is only for the 2023-24 season. If Chris showcases his ability and becomes invaluable to the Warriors, they'll offer him a contract worthy of his contributions. So it's something of an expensive trial, but you can't really go wrong with a vet like Paul. More importantly, getting the likes of Baldwin Jr. and Rollins off their books was also smart, and it frees up a spot on the roster as well as more flexibility in cap space. The only thing Golden State were reluctant to give up were picks, but they managed to convince the Wizards to take the first round one, which will be first round protected. So all in all, it's not as bad a move as it seems, and clearly the Warriors are planning for the future. Despite this, it's safe to say the Golden State have more or less ditched their two-Tim line plan, because that's the only way you could let go of a player like Poole. I don't think it's the best of ideas, and one that the franchise might come to regret. The plans to maximize the most of what's left of Steph's best years in the NBA and win as much as possible. If you're wondering how Paul fits into the win now plan, then I'll explain. As I said, it made considerable sense to give up a player like Poole, and even with a potentially regressing Steph and Klay, I see them being around for at least 3 more seasons. Steph will be starting games long as he's a Warrior, and that means Poole can't run the ball. Even when he played all 82 games during the 2022-23 season, JP was set to be nominated for the 6th Man of the Year if not for Steph's injuries. That's why it made little sense to invest all that money into Jordan, when Paul could do all that and more. He'll be coming off the bench, and Paul will happily accept that role, knowing that injuries are very common, so his playing time wouldn't exactly decrease. It also gives him a chance to potentially win a championship, and what better place to try your luck than the most successful team of the last decade? The problem is, Paul's production has decreased quite a bit, with the former Suns PG averaging under 14 points and under 9 assists in the 2022-23 campaign. Still, they're solid numbers, and if Paul can do all that in the 2023-24 season for the Golden State, the Warriors will fancy their chances of making some noise in the playoffs. Contrary to popular belief, CP isn't completely useless in the postseason, and if the Warriors use him like they plan to do, he might be the perfect fit to take them to a 5th championship with this core. Just look at how great he was for the Suns, taking them to the NBA Finals in 2021 before blowing a 2-0 series lead to the Bucks. He's not the same player, of course, but he'll have better players around him, players that know how to win in the finals, and that might be all he needs to break his duck in the NBA. There's definitely no doubt about the experience he's got, playing more than 1,200 regular season games and nearly 150 games in the postseason, starting every single one of them. Maybe that experience is exactly what the Golden State were after. But even in terms of his skill set, CP3 brings something perfect for the Warriors. Paul's creativity and eye for the right pass is his greatest strength as a baller. Now, what do passers ideally look for in their teammates? Sharpshooters. That's right. And is there any team in the NBA with a better shooting duo than the Warriors Splash Brothers? Of course not. It's a match made in heaven, and I'm just surprised the Warriors didn't make their move sooner. Cause forget that lack of production, CP's going to average well over 10 assists per game with shooters like Steph and Klay around him. That's definitely an upgrade on JP, who averaged a career-high 4.5 assists in the 2022-23 season. So, from the way his skill set fits perfectly in the Warriors setup to the Golden State letting Jordan Poole leave in favor of the veteran PG, that's how Chris Paul will fit with the Warriors.